Welcome to Free Thought Matters. I'm Dan Barker, co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of atheists and agnostics, defending the wall between state and church. We invite you to join us. You can visit ffrf.us/join for more information or to request a sample copy of our newspaper, Free Thought Today. Our guest today is Sarah Haider. She's the Executive Director of Ex-Muslims of North America, a group that helps non-believers escape Islam and lead normal lives. Sarah was awarded FFRF's Free Thought Heroine Award at our convention in San Francisco, where Annie Laurie and I were able to sit down with her for a few minutes.
Sarah, you're Executive Director of Ex-Muslims of North America, but you were raised in an observant Muslim family. Mm-hmm. So what happened and what's that been like?
Yeah, I was raised Shia Muslim in particular. And I was born in Pakistan, actually, and I was there till I was about 7 or 8. I don't recall exactly how old I was when I got here, but I remember celebrating my 8th birthday in the United States. And since then, I was raised in Texas, and kind of a religious little pocket of Texas as well. So religion was all around me, even if it wasn't Islam in particular. There were, Baptists growing up all around me. Where I grew up, the house across the street was a church, and we would hear church bells all the time. So religion was something that was completely infused in my upbringing from all different directions. But I started questioning the faith in my teenage years. I actually encountered some loud, maybe even obnoxious atheists, you could say, people you might call militant atheists now, who at that time, one of my friends, he left religion and he was very angry afterwards. And he started sort of poking at me about my faith, and I had to prove him wrong. So when I looked into it, I realized, oh no, he has a point. And this is so embarrassing, but maybe there's something to it, that religion maybe doesn't make a lot of sense.
Was your friend raised in religion?
Yeah, he was
raised in Christianity.
He was raised in Christianity, I think.
So you were trying to show that the Muslim religion is different.
Right. Well, he had left. Yeah, he had left. I forget exactly what branch of Christianity, but he grew up pretty religious, and then he left the faith, and he kind of felt betrayed, I think, from his upbringing, and so he had this anger that sometimes people do from atheist backgrounds. So he was kind of spreading the word and trying to get his friends to wake up. And I was one of those friends. And so that was one of the things that really influenced me.
So when this was happening, did you keep all of this secret from your family?
At first, yes. I remember when I recognized that I wasn't religious anymore. I remember reaching out to a religious friend of mine. He was Catholic, but he respected all faiths and respected Islam as well. I reached out to him and I told him, I think this doesn't make any sense anymore. And he said, "Are you an atheist?" And I said, "Yes." And that's when I really remember that it hit me, and I had admitted it to myself. I didn't tell my family because I was afraid of what it might mean to them. I didn't want to hurt them, so I asked questions for years.
Were they real observant? I mean, they took it really seriously?
Well, I grew up in a relatively liberal Muslim family, and I use that word carefully because it's relative to Muslims that they were liberal, but not relative to Christians, not relative to the average religious person in the United States. That is to say, like, I couldn't wear shorts or anything really that showed any of my legs. So I owned my first pair of shorts when I was 19 in college, and I remember feeling naked. But there was quite a bit of restrictions in clothing, in behavior that I observed, which the average person growing up in the United States might think is extremely religious, but from a Muslim context, wasn't actually that strict.
Especially for a woman in a Muslim context, because it would be different for your brothers or for the men.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And there was that was actually part of the reason that I felt that there was some injustice going on in the faith. Part of the things that didn't make sense to me. I remember, my cousins who were grown adult women who had a curfew, and their brothers who were much younger can just stay out and do whatever they want. Nobody really questioned.
Did you have to wear headscarves?
I didn't. My cousins did, a couple of my cousins did. I actually put it on voluntarily for a short period of time when I was in a very deeply religious phase, and I thought this was what I should be doing as a proper Muslim woman, and that this was the right way to go. So I did put it on by choice, and I think that gives me a little bit of insight on why women say that they choose to wear it and what is going on.
Sometimes you hear, oh, this gives me freedom. This makes me free. Well,
right.
Free because if they didn't wear it,
right.
they would be harassed.
Right,
probably.
Right. And there's absolutely, it's unfair to say that it is a choice when you're coming from a context where there's absolutely one good way to be and one honorable way to be. So of course you're going to choose that path.
You have the freedom to be a good woman or a bad woman. Choose,
yeah, right. Yeah? You do whatever you want, but one way you might burn forever.
Or in some families, there might be worse repercussions, correct? But so there's more to this than just you're losing your faith. This must have caused some rupture in your family at some point. Was that when you went away to college?
Yeah, I had to fight to leave to college because this is not, at least in my context where I grew up and how I was raised, it wasn't that common for a girl to move away. Sometimes it happened, but it was one of those things you really frowned upon unless the educational opportunity was just something really wonderful. But I had to fight to be able to move because other people in the community found it suspicious. Why would you want to leave your parents' house? And I remember after years of negotiation, I was allowed to leave and go away for college, and I was really excited to have this freedom for the first time in my life and to be able to live the way I wanted. And at that point it started my double life that I lived, where there's a secular way that I chose to live my life when I was away in college, and the way that I behaved at home, and the extent to which I even told my parents. There was a large gulf there where I just couldn't talk to them, I just couldn't tell them about how I was choosing to live. Slowly we've come to an understanding. What's interesting now is that now that my parents have started to become more accepting of who I am, they are being pushed away by the community, by the broader community, because they are seeing, the broader community sees them as potential contaminants in their culture. So because they've chosen not to shun me, they are kind of feeling that shunning themselves.
They're contaminated by reason and kindness and human values, right?
Well, I suppose as a minority in a predominantly Christian nation, not that we are a Christian government,
right.
The Muslim community may feel especially vulnerable to conversion away from the faith. Is that right?
Well, the mosque is absolutely it's a focal point of how many immigrant groups from the Muslim world come together and find each other. So it really is the social, bedrock of many of these immigrant communities, and it shouldn't be, and it needn't be, but that was just how it fell in the United States because it was convenient way for, say, Pakistanis to meet each other when they came to a new world. So unfortunately, the mosque is a central point of what it means to even come from a certain ethnic background.
So what prompted you to found or co-found Ex-Muslims of North America? Were you still in college? Had you graduated?
I had graduated. I met an ex-Muslim for the first time, and I was shocked that there could be such a thing. I know a lot of atheists say the same thing. I didn't know there were others like me. And it was a similar experience for me. Throughout college and even when I left in high school, I had started to avoid people from a Muslim background because I knew how I would be treated. I knew that I would be maybe rejected for my belief. I didn't want to face that. And I wanted to live my life the way that I wanted to live it. In my hometown, there was also this fear of somebody telling my parents, that this is how she's choosing to live and what is she doing, and then
kind of hiding your true self from your parents at that time. They were probably helping with your education, correct? So that would have been a problem. But so why found a group called Ex-Muslims of North America?
We started off by just informally having meetup groups of ex-Muslims, and it was quite dangerous at that time because we didn't know anybody in the United States who did anything similar, actually meeting apostates, and it can be quite a scary thing. There are people who are targeted even in the United States, and so there's quite a bit of danger there and some paranoia from people when we were first creating these groups.
What did you mean targeted? For violence or for
Yeah, violence and even honor violence, even within your own families and communities, some people have a lot to fear, and rightfully so. And it's not extreme to think that this might be a possibility for some people.
You talked about the honor system within Islam at our convention in San Francisco. Let's look at a little bit of that talk.
I was born in Pakistan and raised Muslim, and I come from a culture which highly values honor, particularly the honor of men. That wasn't meant to be a joke, but that's good. But this honor can be tarnished in many ways, particularly by the actions of your kin, especially female kin. And in this context, leaving the faith, choosing to walk away from God's path, to deny His word, is a truly disgraceful life choice. Walking from the faith is considered indistinguishable from walking away from morality itself. And to forsake God is to forsake goodness. It is inconceivable to many faithful that the choice one makes to leave religion might be one based in reason, that it might be an embrace of a different source of ethics rather than an abandonment of all that is good and right in the world. And it's due to this misconception of the nature of disbelief that I believe why apostates, in particular, those who walk away from faith, are routinely deprived of basic human dignities, and in the case of ex-Muslims, even the right to life. While all non-believers are considered morally compromised in one way or another, it is apostates, those of us who have supposedly already seen the light, who have chosen instead to refuse God, and who are cast as the most corrupt. We are as near to villainy as an ideological choice can get you. So it is no surprise that the decision to leave the faith, particularly in Muslim communities, is often met with extreme hostility, even violence. Numerous public opinion polls demonstrate the hatred for ex-Muslims throughout the Muslim world. Majorities in Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, a variety of others believe ex-Muslims should be killed for their disbelief, but one does not need to solely rely on hard data to gauge the alarming levels of intolerance for apostasy. Because across the Muslim world, vigilante mobs threaten those who leave the faith, and too often family members may be the ones who someone has to fear most. And in the West, it really is the actions of family members, whether that be shunning, abuse, or violence, that looms most heavily on the minds of those who leave the faith. However, even if you are lucky enough to have a family which chooses not to hurt or to disown you, it is taken for granted that you should have enough decency and tact to stay silent about your lack of faith, to keep your immorality to yourself. You can choose to do otherwise, but it would come at a high cost, an extreme shame and dishonor, which will cast a shadow over not just yourself, but any relative or associate of yours. This is why honor violence exists and persists. A family with a dishonorable member is pressured to take action, anything to stop the bad behavior of their kin, lest this bad action or behavior of the relative casts shame on the family and of the community. Honor violence is, on some level, truly self-preservation. So it is in this sense that it's quite disorienting to find myself honored for the very same actions which I find nothing but great dishonor in my former faith community. And it proves, truly, if nothing else, that the malleability of our societies. It is a testament to our capacity to evolve, to progress, and to be the masters of our cultures and communities, not merely to be mastered by them.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
And we're back with more Free Thought Matters. We're talking with Sarah Haider, co-founder and executive director of Ex-Muslims of North America. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Annie-Laurie Gaylor. And Sarah, can you talk a little bit about the general experience of members who join Ex-Muslims of North America?
Mm-hmm. It's hard to give one picture because the experiences are quite wide. Ex-Muslims come from a wide variety of cultures. Many of them are different continents. So we have members from Somalia, from Ethiopia, and then we have members from Iran. We have members from Saudi Arabia. We have members from Indonesia. And so it's a different experience depending on where you are from. But we have found patterns that are quite troubling. Quite often, women from conservative backgrounds have to cut ties with families or are in danger in a way that men might not be. We've actually found that women are more likely to be very out and very open and loud once they leave, because they kind of had to cut ties from the communities entirely, whereas some of the men still can maintain a little bit of the ties, so they're not as willing to be so outspoken because they don't want to sever the ties that may remain. Some members of, there's the horrific examples of people who are really worried about honor violence or actual real abuse from their family members. But we've helped quite a few people who are in those kinds of emergency situations. We've helped them find shelter and lodging when they need it. And the purpose
Were they
of
thrown out of their homes, maybe?
And there's been many people who've been getting thrown out of your home. That's very common, or just being forced to stay inside and being physically abused and essentially imprisoned in your own home. And so we have one member whose story we chronicled in our video series, Life Beyond Faith. When he left the faith and told his family, they basically locked him in a room and forced him to memorize the Quran, study the Quran, and they were very abusive towards him. He eventually ran away and lived on his own, got emancipated and everything. Later on, there was a peace offering. He went back, and they, lured him into the basement where they beat him bloody again, and then he managed to escape a second time. And that's sort of the extreme case, but unfortunately it's one of those things that we always have to keep, that this is a possibility. And nobody thinks that their parents are ever going to hurt them in this way. It's always a little bit unexpected that how can people so close to you hurt you in this way. So we always say, even if it isn't an everyday occurrence, it definitely should be something that everyone should be cautious of or mindful that this might be a possibility in their own situation.
So how old is Ex-Muslims of North America?
We started in 2013. So we're getting to be a little bit older, and we now have I'm executive director, so I run much of the operations in Ex-Muslim North America, and we're expanding our reach a little bit. We did a tour of campuses, college campuses, all last year and part of this year, which was called Normalizing Dissent, and the videos are online on YouTube for anybody who wants to get them. And the idea was just to have panels of ex-Muslims, these voices that we thought were hidden and ignored from the mainstream, because we don't have a very polarized view of the world. We come from Muslim backgrounds, so we have empathy towards this immigrant community, this community that often faces bigotry. We have empathy towards them. At the same time, we're often targeted by some of those, by that community and some of the conservative elements of that community.
So in Normalizing Dissent, did you pull a lot of Muslims from campuses, or was it just a diverse crowd?
Well, it was always interesting. It depended on the campus and how much, and whether the local Muslim Student Association knew we were there or not. But quite often we would see Muslims in the audience. I noticed, hijabi women in the audience. Sometimes it would be hecklers, and sometimes they would just be there to listen. So we thought that it was really important to just get out that this voice exists and this group of people exists, and it's perfectly fine to stay here in the middle and have compassion and empathy for the people, but look at some of these ideas in a more critical light.
So if you're an ex-Muslim, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an atheist, does it? What is the makeup of your group? Are they non-believers, or are they?
Yeah, not necessarily, right? Ex-Muslims doesn't necessarily cover non-theists, but it does with Ex-Muslims of North America. We are a non-theist organization, and we do this because we believe in secular values and in free thought, but also, well, if you think of it from a community perspective, you leave the faith and you join another faith, well, now you have this community of people that can help you. You have a church, you have someone who can help you move on to a different kind of life. And people who left the faith and never joined another one, they had nowhere to go and no one to support them. And there's a sense of complete total loss of that social contact and that community. And we were hoping that we can give them another avenue where they can seek that kind of support.
They must be relieved to find you, that they can just unload and find other people to talk to.
Yeah, I wish there was an organization like this when I was leaving the faith, because I thought that I had to cut out that part of my identity entirely.
That is often why people found groups. Yeah. That's why I helped co-found the Freedom from Religion Foundation. We wanted an organization that served our needs and promoted our views. So
you radical women, you.
So what else does Ex-Muslims of North America do? Do you have annual meetings, or is it mostly online?
So the majority of the biggest, meatiest part of what it is that we do is building support networks and communities across the United States and Canada. And the idea is just to give people another avenue where they can be themselves, they can feel like they're not being judged for leaving the faith while still maintaining maybe some of the aspects of that background. And so we hold meetings, and there's local groups across the United States and Canada, actually, because we are Ex-Muslims of North America. That includes Canada. So we have some groups, which is actually interesting because the composition of ex-Muslims there is a little bit different because of the immigration patterns.
That's right.
Anyway.
Well, and they're friendlier to immigration right now. But I think I've heard you say, though, that is there a screening procedure when people contact you, because there is this security issue?
There is, yeah. And this is one of those things I wish we didn't have to do. And it's depressing to even have to do. But it's required to maintain the safety and the feeling of safety for the community, which are two different things but related, in that we want to make sure that people who join our groups know that we've put in some thought into who comes and who is allowed in. So we do have a screening process where we make sure to speak to people, and I can't go into too much detail, but we try to understand who it is who's going to be joining. So these are not public events or public communities. These are entirely underground and only accessible after the screening.
Do you ask them to commit blasphemy? That way they would never do it if they weren't a non-believer?
I think she can't give away the trade secret.
But I don't think so. No, I don't think that's part of it. But I think that'd be an easy thing to be able to fool your way around.
Yeah, but a true believer wouldn't do it. Right?
Maybe if it was for the right reasons, right? You're taking down an apostate group that was causing havoc in the world.
Well, and that's quite a testament to how draconian the Muslim religion is to what they call apostates, that this would have to be underground, and you would have to take this level of security to screen people that they're who they say they are, because the concern is somebody would infiltrate and rat on everybody, and there would be people endangered.
Right, and it's important that some of our members, they are, I would say most of our members are actually in the closet. That's we borrow a lot of gay rights lingo, but they're in the closet and haven't told anyone and can't tell anyone, especially if they're younger, if they're in high school or in college. That's quite hard to come out. And for some people, they're married and their spouse is religious, and they fear that there'll be impending divorce, and they'll be separated from their children if it were known that they were not theists. So many of them are in the closet, which means that the privacy of who is a member and who is an ex-Muslim is very important.
Carefully guarded.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I don't know, is this a volunteer position? Is it a full-time job for you? Do you have to work on the side?
This is a full-time job for me now. It's a recent development, and I'm so happy, because I was losing my mind entirely trying to do this on the side. But I did do that for many years. That's what we did. We were all volunteer for quite some time. Recently, we've been able to have staff, and that's really changed the way that we're able to organize and the scale of our activities.
Can non-Muslims help out? Do you have like a membership or a donor program?
We work with quite a few, non-ex-Muslim, organizations and groups. As to whether anybody works within the organization directly, not at this time. We keep it. We want it to be ex-Muslims working for and with ex-Muslims.
People could contribute.
Absolutely, yes. And we would love for anybody who's listening to this and watching to contribute on our website at exmuslims.org.
I wondered if we could talk a little bit more about the Quran. When you were starting to examine your faith, when it was first questioned as a teenager, Did you go back to the Quran and start reading it? And what were your conclusions?
It's one of those things where when you go into it, when you're religious and it's just, you take it for granted, there's the way that you're looking at it then, and then when you come back to it with a skeptical view, it falls apart so quickly. And I remember when I was looking back into the religious scriptures that I was told, and I think, I don't know how common this is from all Muslims, but this was very common for me to hear, was that the Quran was the most beautiful, most poetic thing that had ever been written. And it was just impossible for man to create anything more beautiful. Well, when you read it, it's actually not quite beautiful, not that beautiful. You know, there's just there's quite a bit there there's grammatical errors, there's logical leaps, there's contradictions. It's
quite a bit of warlike admonitions, just as in the Christian and Hebrew Bibles.
It's something that just cannot be applicable to modern life. It's absolutely something that was for its time. That's the best thing that you can say about it, that it was something applicable for its time.
It was written in Arabic, but most Muslims in the world don't speak Arabic. So
No.
Did you have to recite Arabic phrases when you were growing up?
I learned a little bit, but largely I read English translations and then Urdu translations, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. The way you're supposed to do it is to read it in the original Arabic, learn the original Arabic, and many people who go on to study the Quran in that way do it. But
Sarah, I feel that former Muslims like you speaking out and organizing, and it's not just in North America, it's worldwide, is really critical to I think world peace, for the Enlightenment to continue. I mean, we're seeing a very, very important movement and a very brave and courageous movement. Don't you agree?
yeah, I'm actually, it's one of those things where when you look into the Muslim world and you look at the barbarity of what is going on there, it's easy to feel a sense of hopelessness. But what I see is hope everywhere, truly. And it sounds absurd when you then talk about honor killings and blasphemy laws that are just from the Middle Ages. But truly, there are people who are speaking out, and I see new ex-Muslim thought leaders and activists crop up all the time, and organizations like mine that are cropping up, and we're helping and supporting them the best we can. And that is amazing that it's even possible, but it is happening, and they're growing strength.
Well, your optimism is very encouraging. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us today.
And you are a true free thought heroine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
And thank you for watching Free Thought Matters.
Because free thought matters.